Welcome back, SMITE fans, to the SMITE Summer Masters Tournament. We are done with the halfway point of the day, and we move in now to our second half. And all of this brought to us by our good friends over at Prime Gaming. So if you do not already have a Prime membership, first off, go ahead and grab one of those because you get free music, movies, shipping, and more with a Prime membership. And then connect that over to your Twitch account. That way you can get Prime Gaming, because every single month, and it is 3 days into the beginning of a new month, you get all kinds of new games, new content in other games, skins in our games as well. Between SMITE and Paladins, you can get some free stuff out of there. So make sure that you are making the most of your Prime membership and your Prime Gaming, as well as getting a cool free Twitch sub over to your favorite channels, which you can use here to get some great content as well. So thank you so much to Prime Gaming for being the sponsor of Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League. And here in the third set, I'm J-Mac, and I've got Mifflin joining me on the desk as we get ready to jump into the Olympus Bolts and the Xibalba Storm. And this should be at least a very fun match to watch, Mifflin.
I think so. Is that a bit? Are you doing like a fun havers thing? Or is that just like a happy coincidence? Because there's no such thing as mistakes.
Yes.
That's right.
It's a bit, and it's also just a coincidence. It's a coincidental bit.
Xibalba Storm, previously the fun havers, probably going to have some fun today. I think there's like some parity between these two teams, like personality-wise. It just feels like, the Xibalba Storm, a squad that's always happy-go-lucky. They take their losses in stride. The Olympus Bolts, less losses, but they also take them in stride. So I think maybe parity in at least the decision-making and personality between these two squads.
It should be a very fun matchup between these two teams out here, between the Bolts and the Storm. But let's take a look at our schedule for the day to see what you've already missed, because like I said, we're in the second half of our day. The standings obviously will reflect through, because these are 4 different groups that are playing out over the course of these 5 days, and every day we'll get to see one of the matchups in these groups. So we went through Group A and then Group B prior. Now we're jumping ourselves into Group C, and it's going to have 2 SPL, 2 SCC teams in each of those brackets matching up. All of this to go to the end of the week, where we'll take the top 8 teams from those groups to move on to a bracket play for week number 2. So between the Olympus Bolts and the Xibalba Storm, whoever loses this one isn't out just yet. It just means that the loser is going to have to play even more SMITE in order to try to make their run through, where the winner only has to win 1 more set to go by. But for our first 2 sets of the day, the Atlantis Leviathans able to find the 2-0 over the Kalin Wardens. The Valkyries found their 2-0 over the Eldritch Hounds, and now we jump into that second half between the Olympus Bolts and the Xibalba Storm. You can see BaRRaCCuDDa standing by, having a little bit of fun with the Bolts, having a little bit of conversation there with BaRRaCCuDDa. But then we can jump over to our bracket to kind of see how Group C pans out for this one, because as I said, there are 4 teams in each of these groups. The Bolts and the Storm are at least the first 2 of those. We'll get to talk a little bit more about those ones as the week goes on, because again, it's only day number 1 of 5 of this illustrious event.
Yeah, man. Day 1 of 8, right?
Well,
we got,
true.
Because
it's
like a multi-week event.
Right.
That's right. If you guys think to yourselves, okay, 20 sets, that makes sense to me. I'll watch all that. Yeah, no. I want you here next week, Friday through Sunday, again, to see the conclusion, the stunning conclusion of SMITE Masters. But plenty of matches before we get there, and I think we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't talk about the boys playing here today. The Olympus Bolts, no strangers to the league. We fan favorites, and a team that have been at times at the top, at others still pretty close to the top. And gone are the days of, all right, either the Bolts are looking real good or they're looking not so very good. Now it's, hey, either the Bolts are looking good or they're looking great. That's the conversation revolving around this team. And I think the guy on your screen right now deserves every bit of praise that we can laud upon him. Ven has really diversified his god pool in particular. Feels like any given day or any given match, he could play something different. Jake has very quickly adapted to that SPL style now, has really, really stepped up, no longer is kind of getting picked or getting over-aggressive. Now he's just, hey, I'm here. I'm going to be initiating these fights. I'm going to make sure that things are going well for my team. And he synergizes incredibly well with the other duo laner, BaRRaCCuDDa, possibly like the most veteran player in all of SMITE.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe we talk about Zatman, but it's between those 2.
Yeah, it's definitely between the 2 of them. I think also LASBRA has made a lot of strides in this season and over the time in his course of the SPL, really shoring up kind of those hills and valleys that he has had, where LASBRA will have some really bad games, but some really good games, and now we're starting to kind of see that close up a little bit more, kind of no longer the either 0-7 or 7-0 LASBRA. Now we're getting a little bit more of the maybe the 2-2s to get the team going, the 4-4s, kind of jump themselves in there.
Yeah, no more hills and valleys. Now it's mountains and plateaus. Yeah. We're still pretty high up there.
Still definitely getting some highs up there. And we do, as you saw a moment ago, BaRRaCCuDDa standing by for a pregame interview with the Olympus Bolts.
That's right. I'm here in the booth with the Bolts, distracting Bear. We've been having relaxing conversations. You even got it. We had a massage. We had a moment. Well, the camera was definitely on us, so it's either there. All right, I got it. The question immediately that comes to my mind. You guys are the Bolts. They're the Storm. Which do you feel is stronger? Just like like multiple Bolts or like a full Storm here?
Well, I just feel like we shouldn't be fighting to begin with. I feel like we should be working together against everyone else.
So what I'm hearing is there's now collusion. There's now collusion. I had a completely other question, and I'm now using this stride over to Vin to try and think of what it was, because it's completely slipped my mind. Oh, it's the attire, right? You guys have been wearing the tracksuits for weeks now at this point. If you were going to the beach, you still rocking this tracksuit? Is this something that's going to be happening? Or you changing it into something, I mean, maybe still bright yellow, but something else?
I think we were switched to the yellow Speedos that we have under these. I know you can't tell, but we all have yellow Speedos on. So yeah.
There's other like Twitch subs, like extra premium. If you're a tier 3 sub at any of these guys' channels, that's how you get the Speedos. You know what? LASBRA, you're safe this time around. I'm going over to Haddix. I just to make this one more serious, or somewhat. How are you feeling about this matchup? You know, we've seen some of the SCC guys so far today put up some pretty decent fights. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling extremely nervous. I mean, there's Uzzy over there, bro. I mean, he's like my favorite streamer. I'm kind of shaking, but, you know, I got this guy next to me, so I should be good.
You've got 4 other streamers in the booth with you. And they're another, okay, maybe Las, okay. Mainly Las. But nobody else, like, Uzzy's your favorite.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's as simple as it gets. Either way, it sounds like things are pretty good here in the Bolts booth. We'll go back to the desk and get into this set.
Always a lot of fun to be had when you're talking to the Olympus Bolts. Haddix having to go up against now his favorite streamer, maybe a little bit of nerves, maybe at least a little bit of fun to be had from Haddix, the soul laner of the Olympus Bolts. Everybody getting ready. And even BaRRaCCuDDa talk about how he and the Storm, or his team and the Storm, should maybe be working together through this event, because maybe he thinks the two of them go hand in hand. But unfortunately for BaRRaCCuDDa, they do have to face off against the Xibalba Storm, who has been a team of hot discussion, because these are guys who came in here. You have some of the tenured talent with Uzzy, with Oceans, and you have some pretty rising stars, at least amongst the SOC, SCC, with Joshy and InMyZen. And then you had Magicfeet, who just came out of left field in Season 9 and has been dominating in the jungle.
He has been. I mean, I would argue Magicfeet has been a little bit hot and cold recently. I think the conversation around him is like similar to the conversation we used to have around LASBRA, where if Magicfeet's having a good game, the rest of the Storm's looking pretty good, and I think that's about par for the course right now. So I think if we're evaluating the odds of this team, I think it begins and ends with Magicfeet out of the jungle. He really has been diversifying his god pool recently, but still needs to figure out what those consistent mainstays are going to be. Otherwise, I mean, we could talk about Uzzy ad nauseum, but I think that really it's, hey, is he playing Cthulhu or Odin? If yes, that's looking pretty good, and if no, he's probably playing Artio, right? Like, those are his 3 selections. I've been pretty impressed by Oceans. We've seen him around the scene for a good long while. Actually used to be the ADC back in the, I believe it was ALG or LG, one of the two, one of the LGs. He was playing ADC in the SPL for a good long while. Since then has really adjusted well to this support role, has become a facilitator for his team, and really stepped up in shot calling. When you used to compare his communication back in the SPL days, it was, hey guys, I need some help in the back line, and also the burn's not so good on the Gold Fury right now. And now it's, hey guys, let's get to the gold. Let's do this. Let's do that. You know, let's focus this person. And that emphatic decision making and veteranship that he brings to this team, I think is going to be integral to the wins for the Xibalba Storm.
And that's definitely something you need up against a team like the Olympus Bolts, or really against any of these SPL squads, to make sure that you do have that prime shot caller, make sure that you have someone who's going to be very audible amongst your team to get those things going. And as we talk about these teams getting ready, it's time for the picks and bans for game number 1 between the Olympus Bolts and the Xibalba Storm. Now, when we talk about the SCC kind of bans out, and usually in game number 1 situations, it's a lot of making sure to kind of take out the meta. But we have seen some teams adapt to putting a little bit of ban priority over towards Magicfeet, a little bit towards Joshy, and at least this time around, something over towards Uzzy. The Olympus Bolts take away the Morgan and Odin as a first 2 bans.
When you got 3 gods, every single ban that gets tossed towards you is 33% of your god pool. So the Bolts taking off that Odin might be one of those keystones of the majority of the Storm's compositions. Now, the other, to a second of the third, Cthulhu there. When I say, if he's not playing Odin, he's not playing Cthulhu, he'll probably be playing the Artio, otherwise Bellona and Amaterasu, a couple other picks that Uzzy has been apt to go towards in the past. So still certainly some potential there. The Bolts have really dedicated a lot of their bans to some unorthodox targets, though, which means that there's a lot of heat still on the table. Cupid comes to mind almost immediately. That god has been absolutely dominating over in the duo lane recently. If we're going to go off the last match, AMC's had a good deal of priority. Lancelot, of course, pretty decent. Need to build a composition around him, though, so the Bolts taking it this early have got plenty of time to build that composition out and strategize what it is exactly that they want to build around it. The Storm, I think, actually might be benefiting in this second pick position. Yemoja, maybe Yemoja Cthulhu, if you're feeling crazy, like King Arthur, not Cthulhu, Cupid rather, or maybe like King Arthur Cupid, Yemoja King Arthur, and Osiris. Go look at the S+ tier list on Reddit, and it's all still there, just abouts.
Really, the only thing kind of in that tier list that has been taken might just be this Khepri, the Xingqian, and the Daji, all the things that the Xibalba Storm banned away.
Of course.
But you said it earlier, if he's not playing the Odin, if he's not playing the Cthulhu, he's probably on the Artio. So he's just going to go straight to the Artio. But notably, at least, Artio not out of the meta, is not an unconventional pick at this point, is definitely something that is still up at the top of the list. We've been seeing a lot of the SPL solo laners pick that one up, and Heimdallr as well has been something that's been really rising amongst the SCC. Typically, the EU SCC kind of goes through these early pickups of this hunter, but I'm still seeing, as you said, Cupid still up, Chernobog still available as well. Those kind of been the top two, the top two picks. And the Olympus Bolts, I mean, if they want to, they could take both of them.
Yeah, I mean, Cupid would be pretty decent here. I'd like to see Chernobog, though, I think, considering you've got the Lancelot. I mean, Cupid, of course, plug and play and will bring pressure to any lane that you toss him into, but Chernobog's global presence really helps out a lot in these team fights. How often do we see Lancelot, when he's like the solo diver on your team, go into that ultimate, get all the way in the back line, get someone down to like 10% HP, and then die, and nobody's in range to follow up because nobody else has got a massive horse that they can just hop on and dive deep with. Chernobog could just head up into the air, jump into someone's shadow, and make sure that Lancelot at least has a little bit of help back there. So maybe that's something the Bolts could consider. Or, if you're worried about not being able to stop your own momentum in that horse stance, throw up a Cabrakan wall, ult right into that. You're stuck with them.
Cabrakan and Cupid. So completely, at least for now, and maybe for the remainder of this game at least, we'll be ignoring Chernobog as an option for the hunter. So Lancelot Cabrakan leaves some flexibility up. We've seen Cabrakan just in this phase of SPL go to 3 different lanes, solo, support, and mid. We've seen Lancelot go jungle and solo. Cupid is pretty much only stuck, at least over to the duo lane. So a little bit up in the air, exactly where the Bolts are going to round out their draft. But we know the Artio going over to the solo for Uzzy, Heimdallr. I guess we can also say some flex towards mid and hunter, though we've been more often seeing it in the hunter role. For the Storm in these last 2 picks, is this now your opportunity to kind of pick up the remainder of your carries, Myth, or would you rather see a front line locked in for the Storm?
I will vanquish
I'd
all
like to see
evil
you,
from
Huang.
this world.
That's a good call, Myth.
Yeah,
You're crazy at this.
Yeah,
you're pretty good at your job.
That's why I'm here, you know. That's why they bring me on. No, legitimately, I would have liked to have seen a bit of initiation here. I think that the Bolts now could probably look at this draft and be like, okay, well, it's kind of just Artio getting in our back line. Maybe we start dedicating a couple more bans towards Magicfeet, who is very often gone towards things like Gilgamesh, Shen, and Fenrir as some of his mainstay picks. I might just be banning some of those out if I'm the Olympus Bolts and make the Storm work a little bit harder to make this draft start to tie together. But as it stands, Artio holds her own in lane, assuming that we haven't seen the solo laner lock in just yet for the Olympus Bolts. I think Haddix could have counterpick, or even assuming that we have seen one, Lancelot into Artio once you finish up Soul Eater, pretty strong. Cabrakan into Artio, just fine. Doesn't really have the best ability to clear out those waves. The stun and bear form really going to stop your tremors. But I'll say worst case scenario, handshake lane in the solo. Heimdallr up against Cupid, or anybody for that matter up against Cupid, probably not really establishing pressure, so duo lane should belong to the Olympus Bolts. Huang very, very strong in the mid game though, but pressure in mid doesn't net you a whole lot anymore. It really is about that side lane pressure. If you're controlling the solo, you get the Pyromancer. If you're controlling the duo, you get the Gold Free. If you're controlling mid, you get like a Greater Scorpion, maybe like a mid camp sometimes, unless you're really controlling mid. Then you kind of control the map, but it's hard to get that much of a disparity going, especially with no jungle selection just
in
yet.
a new beginning.
Man, I was hoping this wouldn't be it. because I know Magicfeet really likes this Shiva, but it just puts such a timer on your game. Early game, dominates, right? I mean, walks up, pulls you in, knocks you up, additional attack speed, great displacement, dash to chase down your kills, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, that all sounds great. Well, why doesn't he like Shiva in the jungle? Get to level 10, now your ultimate does 500 damage and takes a half hour to do it. You know, you're not winning those trades just about ever. The anti-heal that is pretty much core on a lot of these builds, just Brawlers beat stick, you're not saying, oh no, I had to build it because we needed anti-heals. All right, I got power and pen. Divine Ruin, oh no, I had to build it. No, you got power and pen. Those are both stat lines that mages, assassins, everybody really wants. Means that Shiva will have really mitigated efficacy come 15 to 20 minutes into the match, which is what I mean by saying your game's on a timer. It's the inverse of the Kali conversation,
awesome.
which is, all right, we don't have a jungler until like 15 minutes in. For the Storm, you have a jungler for 15 minutes.
Now with this Pele, we get to see where the rest of the draft of the Bolts does go. Lancelot to the solo lane. Cabrakan over to the support role for Awesome Jake. And whenever I think back to LASBRA, when I think back onto his days back in the SEC, on rosters like Insignum, Pele is definitely one of those gods that was a standout for LASBRA, allowed him to get aggressive very early in the game, get that early burst damage out there. And I see where you're maybe shaking your head. We'll get to that whenever it does get locked in, if that pick does get locked in. And then Hell for Venenu, something that he's been going to a little bit more often as of recent to get a little bit of sustain over at least to his team. Then the question now comes to anti-heal for the Xibalba Storm.
What?
But it's not going to be the Shiva jungle. Shiva support, the likely answer now going over for Oceans with Kuang as the final pick for the Storm.
Oh, man.
So does this make it better or worse for you, or Mifflin?
Well, the other conversation you could have around Shiva is that if he falls off so hard come late game, you need something to pick up the slack in the late game. Kuang is an absolute machine once he's 6 slotted, so that makes some sense. Oceans loves playing hyper-aggressive support. Shiva fits that style, but why'd you lock in Heimdallr then? You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to have that, I'm going to get in your face, I'm going to get active, I want to start fighting right now, wouldn't you have just preferred to have the Cupid? Wouldn't you have just preferred to have one of the killingest dual lanes possible? Why take something that is lauded for its safety? The CC immune ultimate, the Gjallarhorn to knock away, the Bifrost for infinite safety. Generally, when you have a Heimdallr and you toss him over in the dual lane, it's, all right, cool, we can leave him alone and we can go get active somewhere else. When you got a Shiva over there with them, kind of makes you feel like you want to get aggressive in that lane, but up against Cabrakan Cupid, I'm not sure you're allowed to get aggressive in that lane. So interesting decision-making and a quite curious pivot from the Xibalba Storm. But if we're going to evaluate Kuang in a vacuum, I think that guy's slept on, man. I just can't imagine he's bad. Consistent damage output, Dragon Call incredibly strong, objective burn through the roof, a late game execute to put pressure on these beads. Invisibility is just good. I'm a massive Kuang fan. I hope it looks good for my sake personally.
Well, hopefully so, and maybe also for Magicfeet and the rest of the Xibalba Storm's sake, that it also looks good in this game. And it kind of also maybe then opens up the discussion. You know, we talked with a couple of these junglers earlier on about some of the new changes into the defensive items, specifically that Magi's cloak that's been picked up a few times. And it seems that that's brought a few extra assassins up to the forefront, and maybe now a magical assassin. You think that might be something that this Kuang does end up going towards the late game for some defense, Miff?
I mean, Magi's helps out a good deal, right? Like, Kuang's main weakness is, all right, I finally closed that gap. My dragons are ready. I'm going to start chainsawing with my little tiny sword. Oh, man, I got stunned. And that's it. Like, I'm done. My water illusion's down. I can't do anything. With Magi's Revenge, oh, man, I got stunned. Now I'm moving at you faster, and you're taking more damage, and I've also got an execute. So I think it will fit that playstyle very, very well. But it's a double-edged sword. He doesn't really have great ways to deal with the Magi's, does he? So gonna be relying on the rest of his team to do that for him if he wants value from his own execute.
We'll have to see if the SCC team in the Storm can maybe find the first win for the SCC up against the Olympus Bolts. It's game 1 with Dulcin and Spooky Mars.
That's right. In theory, our previous matchup between the Valkyries and the Hounds would have been the closest as far as SPL seeding and SCC seeding. Now we start to separate back out a little bit with the Olympus Bolts up against the Xibalba Storm as Dulcin, Spooky, and Doug all together for this best-of-3 set. And Spooky, I think plenty of conversations to be had around SEC going up against SPL squads, stylistic differences between SEC, SPL level of play. I think that comes to play a bit here as well. But I look at the Bolts, I look at their draft, and I have to look at LASBRA and this style of pick for Laz. I love the aggressive, in-your-face style of Pele. Are you hoping to see Laz get active early here in the game?
I mean, you almost have to, especially against these SEC teams who really do favor early aggression very, very much. I don't know how much you've watched the Storm play. It's constant early aggression. So if you want to go against that, you almost have to match that same aggression. Maybe not in the same lane, take that somewhere else across the map. We already looked a little bit at Oceans and Zen in this duo lane, which is kind of a strange matchup, right? You got Shiva and Heimdallr, aggression and safety. Well, Oceans also tends to get a little over-aggressive at times. He steps very far up. He likes to get active. The best way to punish that is have an early game jungler able to rotate over and punish very early on, like LASBRA can do here.
My goodness, Jake is low, but Spooky, I swear, if you make the call happen, your first cast with me, Oceans nearly dies. In fact, he will to awesome Jake, who blinks forward. What were you saying about over-aggression at times? Oceans walks it, now he gets Jake low, but it's still first blood over to the Olympus Bolts as Jake has got a pretty active support early on there as well. Maybe just a bit too much from Oceans.
Yeah, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. This is neither. This is the battleground of the gods.
That's right.
If you want the win, you want to take it all the way. If you don't do that, well, it happens like that. Awesome Jake, able to turn it around. There's so much damage in this duo lane, just as a whole, right? Cabrakan, so much pressure early on. BaRRaCCuDDa on this Cupid, you know he's bringing tons of damage. He's got the CC, and you can combine those very effectively to counter the aggression that's really only coming from Oceans on the Shiva pick. InMyZen, he likes to scale a little bit later. He wants to bide his time and build up the ADC. Uzzy likes to take these trades in the solo lane constantly.
Well, let me ask you, Spooky, does this totally change the mindset, in your opinion, of Oceans here in this lane? Because the opposite of what you want has already happened, where you want to be able to stay aggressive, get aggressive in the duo lane. I mean, a little bit behind, right? He's still level 2, Jake also level 2. Like, are you completely abandoning the game plan? He'll double dash away. Do you have to abandon the aggressive game plan now already? Or do you still think there's opportunities for Oceans?
Absolutely not. There's no way Oceans is abandoning the game plan. I've seen the man, like, 3,000 gold down. He's still holding the W key. He's still trying to make it happen.
So it's an Oceans question, right?
It's an Oceans question. He's going to keep looking for those plays. He's going to stay aggressive. He will step up to the enemy purple buff by himself if he has to try to look for something to make happen. Whether the support is there, that's going to be a question of Magicfeet, right?
Sure.
He likes to be aggressive in the early game, but on this Kuang pick, maybe not the best facilitator of that. Like we already talked about on the desk, Kuang likes to scale up. He's very much a late game god who excels at the maximum build. Early on, you're not really finding a whole lot of damage. Now, maybe that's why they pick Oceans for the Shiva pick. Maybe they're trying to mitigate how little the Kuang is able to do damage-wise and try to facilitate that. Once he hits level 5, he doesn't have to bring all the damage, right? You can have someone else do the majority damage. Kuang can just pop on and say, hey, I'm Magicfeet. Nice to meet you. I'm going to eat you. I'm going to turn dragon, and we're going to leave.
Well, you're going to need Magicfeet to be there, just like Laz is over on the right side of the map. Oh, no, the last bit of damage is missing. Maybe Laz and Haddix figured that it would be there. Maybe just one more auto attack. If nothing else, you forced Uzzy back to base. Teleport, not there, so the Artio just used it, now has to walk back to lane. That's exactly what you were asking for, Laz, to get active early. It's not even level 5 yet on this Pele. It's easy rotation over. And giving Haddix a leg to stand on, that this Lancelot over in the solo lane has been so strong, not only in the SPL, we've seen it in some other matchups as well. And so maybe a good spot to funnel some pressure, though Magicfeet, right as you call it, Spooky, doing the same over in duel, and he's got a low-held target, and BaRRaCCuDDa, and the damage is there as well. Magicfeet puts down BaRRa, and that's exactly what the duo lane of the Storm needed.
You know, like we said, you don't have to do all the damage as the Kuang. If you have that duo lane there to put the damage out, go ahead, let him do most of the work. Come in, clean it on up. And this is really, really good for Magicfeet on this Kuang. The faster he can get online, especially with what looks to be an early fan crops, the faster he can be more impactful on this map.
Yep.
The early game pressure is going to be intense from both teams. You have to be able to match LASBRA on this Pele. And that's a tall order coming from the jungle. LASBRA on this Pele is able to bring so much aggression. Pele's just very, very strong in the early game. Sure, she does tend to drop off a little bit as the game goes on. The same can be said of the Shiva. So both sides here, you have this early aggression that can play into each other. But I really think the Bolts have a slight advantage in that because LASBRA can take it across the map so much earlier than Oceans can. I think that's going to be the tipping point.
Right, gonna depend on when Oceans feels comfortable to get out of that duo lane where it feels like, you know, even at the SPL level, and we've watched the Bolts and seen their games, so much of it hinges on Laz and Ven, it feels like. If Laz is on it, the Bolts are on it. If Laz is having an off game, Bolts fall just a bit flat. Of course, can win those types of games still, but LASBRA is such a spearhead for this squad. So level 5 now on the Pele. Looks like we'll be able to go back soon, finish up that first item, and maybe get the ball rolling just a bit. BaRRaCCuDDa would love to just hang out, farm things up, scale up on this Cupid as well. Now, one thing we haven't really talked about much is this mid lane matchup. Joshy, of course, very safe on the Huang. Has a slight opportunity in the early levels, but Ven on this Hell. Spooky, are you sold on the Hell stock? Are you buying it up? Do you think Hell's in a good enough spot here to warrant this pick?
Normally, my answer would be no, but it's not just Hell. It's Hell piloted by Venenu, and in that case, my answer 180 is 100% yes. Ven on Hell has always looked consistently great. He's got really good damage. He's able to output the cleanses at critical times, which is going to be absolutely massive here against the Kuang. If you can find Magicfeet trying to execute one of your teammates, drop the cleanse on him, get him out of there. And then the ult doesn't just get reset, it's on full cooldown. He just doesn't have that tool available to him any longer. So Ven, I think, has tons of value in this game right now. And that's really their main damage that he's going to be cleansing.
Right, yeah, and that's a lot of what the Xibalba Storm are hoping. They'll be able to scale up and find a bit later on here in this game. Still a few minutes away from that first rotation of neutral objectives to spawn, though. Magicfeet could get pincered here. Supports, mids, jungles, all kind of meeting on the other side of the mid lane, but Oceans is rotated out of duo as well. LASBRA, in fact, back in, but LASBRA is here alone. The rotation out from Ven in mid. First ultimate of the game out of the Shiva. Won't end up resulting in much. Uzzy has to send a stun towards Haddix, but Haddix going to chase down this Artio. LASBRA blinks forward, this time dashes in as well. No mistake made in the solo lane from the Bolts on the second chance gank. And LASBRA able to notch a kill, Haddix on the assist. And it's Uzzy who ends up going down, so slowing down the scaling of this Artio. A great look for the Bolts, and that was a long chase down from Laz.
And this encapsulates one of the problems that Storm has. They tend to overcommit on a lot of engagements. I mean, you already saw they committed a lot of tools at the beginning of that fight, even going so far as to use the Shiva Tandava there.
That's right.
For little to no value. Okay, so then they try to back off, but at that point they've expended so many tools, it starts to look like a much better fight for the Bolts. Haddix says, okay, well, I've got the rundown here. LASBRA, you got Blink, you got ult. Okay, let's go. Let's make it happen. Tower, we're 8 minutes into the game now. It's not as much of an issue as it was at level 4 when we saw them revert from that dive. They go for it. They get tons of value out of it. And I think that's something we're going to see a lot more unless the Storm's able to be a little bit more disciplined than they have been in some of their SCC games.
Yeah, and think about it. You know, the Bolts as a team, but even back in like the Renegades days with the core of this squad, that style of play is something the Bolts have fallen prey to in their own right over the past 3 or so years. Have really cleaned that up a lot, and are now such a talented squad at punishing over aggression, which is when we went into the cast talking about stylistic differences between teams, and you mentioned maybe an opportunity for the Bolts. It's exactly moments like that. And the Bolts have turned it into a nice little gold lead, built up to about 2,000 or so. And in a minute, you're going to have the Pyromancer, Gold Fury, things like that, potential. That's where the Olympus Bolts can really make their money. 2v2 brewing on right as the blue buff is spawned. But do you know where Joshy is? Do you know where Oceans is? That's what the Olympus Bolts have to be asking themselves here, because both are on the right side of the jungle. But if body language tells you anything, it's that the Bolts not only are aware, but want to take this fight. The walls have been dropped. Over in the back of the fight, but Ven on his rotation out of mid. Snags one onto Uzzy as LASBRA dealt a decent bit of damage on the front of this fight, but Venenu deals the killing blow. And all this over a blue buff, but blue buff plus kill for the Olympus Bolts. A fight they are willing to take. Pretty dominant looking force there for the Bolts.
A much bigger win than you might have expected for such a small buff to be fighting over. But huge Cabrakan walls coming out from Jake on that one. Completely pinned them in, set up perfect for LASBRA for the knockup. Now Ven also in some trouble, but man, they just cannot commit to it. They cannot find that kill. And you know, this is a point where Oceans is maybe not as powerful as you might have wanted him to be on this Shiva. At this point, he starts falling off a little bit more. He's not able to bring as much value. The channel times are just too long on that.
Oh, no.
Oh my goodness.
No, it's bad to worse in the mid lane for the Xibalba Storm. Joshy, I mean, desperate for some farm. And look at the mid lane experience right now. Ven, 2 levels up. He'll be able to go back, pick up that second relic. And it's what you were talking about with not only the cleanses and the utility value that Ven's going to be able to find on this hell, but just so good at, I mean, it's super simple sounding, but just hitting all of his buttons, right? I mean, he had to hit everything there onto Joshy, and he is able to connect. How about the build path, though, for Ven, as we'll pause, see if the Storm are going to answer this Pyromancer. Magicfeet maybe rotates in towards it, but that'd probably be an ill-founded fight. So the Bolts will grab a kill over in mid thanks to Ven and the Pyromancer. With all that extra gold, it's been Warlock Staff first for Venenu. Do a very defensive style of a build with the second item there, Genji's Guard for Ven. And you're not going to get to talk about it yet, Spooky, because Magicfeet is over here in solo lane. This might be exactly what the Storm need. Or maybe they're going to suffer a defeat over in the mid lane. Still plenty of damage for Ven, even with Warlocks and Genjis. Whose force is the ultimate out of Oceans? And I will take this opportunity to let me know if you think that this style of build looks good for Ven.
I think it does, because if you take a look at the drafts, there is a ton of magic damage on the side of the Storm, but LASBRA's now in danger, so I might not get to finish. Never mind, he's got the Eruption. He's able to walk away from that one. But no, if you're Ven...
No, we can't talk about it. We're not allowed to. No speaking about Genji's Guard. And Ven maybe needs all of that extra defense right now, but he will live. As the dive from the Storm is no good. BaRRaCCuDDa rotates out of duo, drops the Fields of Love. But watch out, Haddix out of solo lane on the top of the team fight. Gets the double slow, dashes in towards the Storm, is knocked up himself though. As Uzzy has returned some damage, Jake and Haddix both low. But the damage from the Storm simply has not connected. And it looks like somehow we'll disengage with all 10 players remaining on the map.
Well, Dave, does that answer your question?
I think it does.
Ven limps out of there with a sliver of HP. It's because of the Genji's Guard. He's able to survive all the bursts because there's so much magic damage coming from the Storm. Not only that, the cooldown reduction is absolutely massive on this hell. The more heals you can put out, the more cleanses that you can put out, the more valuable this pick becomes. Because you're not looking to just 100-0 someone all the time as hell. Granted, she could definitely do that with the build, but with this, you want the utility that the hell is bringing, and you see it right there. In fact, even Haddix goes into the Genji's Guard because there's so much magic damage coming out from the Storm. This is the problem with picking magical solo, magical jungler, is it becomes very easy to itemize against all of that damage.
Awesome Jake will go Bulwark of Hope with his second item as well. So Thieves, Bulwark for Jake. 70 magical prots is great, and then that extra bit of shielding towards the end of the fight. Probably synergizes well with what Jake wants to do anyway, right? I mean, a Cabrakan wants to walk into the front of a fight. Oftentimes the target of return aggression. His health bar drops down a bit, that extra shielding will certainly help out. So this has become methodical at this point, Spooky, for the Bolts. They've gotten themselves pretty hefty, 5,000 or so gold lead, as Doug just showed us. And so you're wondering if the Storm are going to reach that point, right? The transition point where Magicfeet becomes that carry. It's Bancroft's into the Charon's coin. Still plenty of item slots to be filled there. But I'm not sure the pacing of the game, as far as gold and objectives go, it's exactly what Magicfeet was hoping for. He's fighting an uphill battle at a 1 to 2 level deficit. Mid laner a few levels down. Could be a tough last 10-15 minutes of this game for the Kuang.
Yeah, it's only really gotten worse since the beginning. If you noticed at the beginning, he had a little bit of a lead in that jungle. He was farming up a little bit more while LASBRA was trying to be active on the map, and it had about 1 level lead. Now that's reversed. It's flipped over to a 1 level deficit, and that's really not where you want to be if you're Magicfeet. However, he's not entirely unused to that, right? We've seen him multiple times, 2 levels down, and he just decides, I'm going to walk at this guy, and I'm either going to make it happen or my team's going to make it happen, or we might go ahead and just get decided. I'll let you figure out which one typically happens there. It really depends on how well Magicfeet and Oceans can communicate. We're gonna have to put that on hold here.
Seems to be a team theme here for the Xibalba Storm. A lot of W keying and getting caught out. That's what happens to Uzzy as Jake drops the walls behind the Artio. Olympus Bolts with their 5th of the game. The net worth charts tell a pretty telling story here. A complete split where the poorest member of the Bolts still richer than the richest member of the Xibalba Storm. And everyone, as far as rolls go, about 1,000 plus ahead of their opponents. Good initiation from LASBRA. Magicfeet, goodbye, says Haddix. And the rest of this fight not looking much better for the Xibalba Storm. Sustain from Oceans needed. Disengage from Joshy is as well, but the Bolts considering a tower dive. Yes, they are. This is a 4 versus 2, but Joshy's got the damage for LASBRA. And the Bolts have had enough. Ends up being a 1-for-1 trade. Far from worst case scenario for the Storm.
Definitely could have been much worse. Very good for Storm there. I mean, sure, it's a 1-for-1 trade, but you consider their position in this game.
That's right.
That pick is excellent, but they're still pushing it too far.
Oceans W key pressed and grayscale screen reached. Haddix will grab that one. And that fits into your storyline just a bit, I think. The opening was seamed there by Oceans, but maybe not quite as wide a gap as Oceans was hoping for. This tier 1 tower, desperate for the Olympus Bolts to knock it down. They are desperate to knock it down, I should say. Finally, the damage will make its way in. There's Pyromancer standing as well, but we continue to fight. The Storm just... Spooky, I should have listened to you. They just keep walking in. They're so far behind. But Uzzy walks in this time, he'll drop. Tier 1 tower still here. At this point, if I'm the Bolts, I'm leaving it up just so the Storm keep walking at me and I can keep farming kills. But no, it'll eventually drop. And then they'll head back to the Pyromancer. A few thousand gold richer.
Yeah, this is exactly the problem that the Storm tends to have, is they're habitual overcommitters. They see an opportunity and they want to make that opportunity happen. They want to turn it into reality. It just doesn't always work. That opportunity is not as big as they see it in their minds.
Right.
Sure, yes, the Bolts are staying at your tier 1. Okay, you've had a couple skirmishes. They're a little bit lower. They've used some of their abilities. But still, take a look at the gold chart. You don't have the item advantage to fight into them right now. And so now we see things like this where Magicfeet is just trying to steal away the chalice, and you get punished. You get revealed. Those are the kind of aggressive plays that Storm loves to make. They play very confidently, but they never play like they're ever behind, and that's both a big strength for them and a great weakness.
Absolutely. Depending on game state, that can be a fantastic mental or a bad mental to have. In this case, the Bolter are able to just kind of keep running it right back at the Xibalba Storm. We're officially out of control. And the bad news for the Storm, Spooky, is
there's more?
It feels like, yeah, there's not only a lot more game to go as far as map state. It feels like the Bolts have a really good composition as far as continuing to just run it down. Zen does not have Crystal ready to go, but does have ultimate. That won't stop Haddix from galloping forwards. And Zen will have to use the Aegis. So tier 2 tower being sieged up by the Olympus Bolts. Fire Giant still standing, mind you, so I'm used to seeing this type of play happen about 5 minutes from now with Fire Giant around the waist of one of the two teams. But it'll end up being an Oni Fury pull. Surprised the Storm aren't running it down at this objective. Looks like this one will go quietly to the Bolts. But it does seem, Spooky, like the Bolts have the style of comp that could continue to force this. Exactly what Awesome Jake is doing. Walls around Oceans. Oceans will dash away. But is that all we have here? Because Oceans is in his ultimate, Haddix is here. And it looks like it might be Fury plus a kill onto the Shiva for the Olympus Bolts. Big advantage, and the Bolts extend their gold lead to 10,000.
Yeah, no, just because they're not all there doesn't mean someone's not going to try to run it down at that objective. Oceans is definitely going to turn up every single time. Unfortunately, you know, that works at some level of play. Up here, you're fighting against the SPL, right? The Bolts are a lot more objective-focused than some of the other teams that Storm has played against in the past. The SCC tends to be, you know, very split between objective-focused gameplay and this kind of kill fiesta that you're seeing Storm trying to go for. Storm's getting very, very punished for it right now. Oceans tries to step up, check out that objective, check out the Fury. Can we make a play on it? The answer is no, and not only is it no, it's a slap in the face as well because there's a counterpunch following it.
That's right, the Fire Giant, the counterpunch now for the Olympus Bolts. Storm might have to try to steal this one. I mean, game close to over anyway here for the Olympus Bolts, but if the Storm aren't able to somehow steal away the FG, which they aren't, by the way, because Magicfeet's an afterthought, Olympus Bolts likely just run away with the rest of the game. It's like a 3-man fire giant pull from the Bolts while a couple members of their team are just off doing different things. Haddix was over in mid. Looks like Jake was kind of running down one side of the jungle. So the Olympus Bolts grab themselves the fire giant here. Gold lead is going to be massive. I guess, Spooky, the Xibalba Storm are hoping that their comp is built well enough for base defense.
Well,
but I'm not sure it is.
It's definitely not the strongest base defense, and even that's not enough, right? At this point in the game, having a good defense comp isn't going to make it for you. You have to hope that the Bolts are also making misplays, making mistakes on their end. So far, target prioritization has been a massive one for both teams. Every time Storm steps up, you've seen the Bolts will drop what they're doing. They will turn everyone onto that target and absolutely melt them down. Storm has not had that same discipline so far. Their attention is split. It's unfocused. They're allowing LASBRA to dive their backline while Magicfeet is maybe trying to hit over here on BaRRaCCuDDa. It's just not working out right now. On this base defense, it's only going to get more difficult. Everyone's going to be funneling it into one spot, but they're going to know their targets. They know exactly who they're going for. And Storm has this kind of single target-oriented team right now. Uzzy can dive in. Magicfeet's only going to be hitting one single person. He's only going to be able to execute one single person. And Ocean, sure, he can dance through the backline. He can throw as much disruption as he can find. But if Magicfeet gets caught out here, that's not even going to happen.
Yeah, you won't even get to see a base defense if anyone from the Storm ends up dying off. 3 members of the Bolts, they're just pushing down the left side. We'll see if Haddix can delay out the back. We'll see if Laz can keep the Xibalba Storm on the map, because we're not even going to get a Phoenix defense at this point. Phoenix has been pulled by the 3 members of the Bolts that are on the left side of the map, and so job done by Haddix and LASBRA. They've kept the Storm on the map. Again, that might actually be a benefit to the Storm if you step up to a Phoenix. It's looking like a surefire deicide and game end for the Bolts. So maybe the Storm more willing to chase out. At any rate, left side Phoenix is indeed gone. And the Olympus Bolts, all 5 with Fire Giant, work down the tier 2 tower in the mid lane. Haddix has eyes for the back line. Ocean, eyes for the front line on the other side. Eyes closed, though, as LASBRA on a killing spree now walks towards the base of the Storm.
I appreciate the confidence, but you can't blink into 5 people with a Fire Giant around their belts. Now this defense is going to look even rougher. Bolts have no hesitation.
No, they sure don't. Awesome Jake drops the walls behind Uzzy. In the mid lane, Phoenix will fall, but only if the Bolts want it to. The Xibalba Storm being routed here by the Olympus Bolts. The early game didn't look horrible. Remember, first blood actually looked pretty competitive after the Olympus Bolts turn it around. Some fights back, but the Xibalba Storm crumbled over by the Olympus Bolts. We're going to close this game out on about a 15,000 gold lead. Take a look at any KDA on the Bolts that you'd like. They all look good right now. The Storm just didn't have the legs to compete with the fast-paced nature of the Olympus Bolts here in this one, and a bit of KDA padding, as if they need it, before the Bolts end up closing out the game. I think plenty of opportunities to look all across the map here, Spooky. I think the Bolts in every facet of the game played their jobs.
Yeah, Bolts looked absolutely phenomenal across the entire game. They punished the aggression from Storms extremely well, and that was really the main thing that Storm had going for them. It was constant aggression that was coming out from them, and they just could not keep up with what the Bolts were answering back with. They just did not have enough force behind those punches, and ends up just getting ran over by the Bolts.
Now here's what we've learned about the Storm, not only today, but just in the Storm's tenure as a team. Specifically back during the SPL play-in tournament and now moving forward into this tournament. Storm are all about having fun. Remember, the squad was the fun havers during the SEC, the SPL qualifier tournament. If they're not running it down, win or lose, this team's not having fun. And all this team cares about is having some fun, maybe making some waves at tournaments like this. Very talented squad. But the Olympus Bolts, if you're playing an aggressive, in-your-face, W-key style of game, tends to be where the Bolts can really succeed. So I think, Spooky, if you start to look forward to Game 2, Storm, I don't know if you want to abandon your game plan entirely. Would you like to see the Storm remain aggressive going into the second game, or pump the brakes a bit?
I would like to see them keep up the aggression, right?
Sure.
Because that is what they are known for. That's what they do. That's what they're best at. But they have to make the picks to facilitate that.
Sure.
Kuang is not going to facilitate your early aggression. Shiva might, but constantly Oceans has been more prevalent on like this Kumbhakarna style pick that can do massive setup for his team, rather than the Shiva that's just trying to get super aggro in the early game.
Look, I know Myth is licking his chops here. He is a profound, outspoken Shiva non-believer, and we'll give him his chance to talk about it. Game number 2, right after this.
Hey, wait, what did it win?
You win the respect.
You're telling me an alien wore this?
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, that was a good cut.
Messaging him to mute.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course, and I can probably watch a stream on the side.
Content's gonna look good.
Pretty good, pretty good.
buying no more dreams. So what you selling? My pockets got dry from the boat. But if you so for real, you could get wet. But not so much. Don't wanna drown a flame, keep that fire lit. Breathe life into it. Now we own my place, always stays true. I won't give my body to nobody new. Can you believe that we could be forever in heat? If you get me till we 6 feet under stress, or if it's all sweet, just hold me
Game number 1 of our third set of the day goes over to the Olympus Bolts over the Xibalba Storm. The early game presence the SPL talent in the Bolts was just a little bit too much for the Xibalba Storm to happen, even despite the fact that it was a semi-aggressive dual lane over for the Xibalba Storm with that Shiva pick over for Oceans. It just could not match the early game that the Cabrakan and Cupid had at Olympus Bolts. And from that point on, the aggression that Haddix was able to find in the solo lane was able to get the Olympus Bolts to find themselves a nice little game 1 win. It's JMac and Myth joining me on the desk to help me continue breaking down that game.
That's right. Look, you picked an aggressive dual lane. You got the lesser of the 2 aggressive dual lanes. What's the difference, though, besides that early game aggression favoring the Olympus Bolts? The Bolts dual lane didn't fall off, man. This Shiva just could not find value. Look, and that's something the Xibalba Storm have struggled with in the past as well, is this propensity to continually go towards selections that only they are playing. Nobody else is playing Shiva just about in the world. I think probably for good reason. Otherwise, you got to talk about the Olympus Bolts just kind of doing it to them. When we see SPL matches that end at this kind of pacing, the conversation is like, hey, what do we even say? Because it was an incredibly one-sided battle. The Olympus Bolts, even when they weren't fighting, and those were rare circumstances where nobody was fighting because the kill pacing was absolutely ridiculous this game, they were still pulling ahead in macro farm. Greater Scorpions, mid-camps, obelisks, pyromancers, gold furies. Go pull up the SMITE PvE Wikipedia page, and everything that is on it belonged to the Olympus Bolts in that match. This was a hard-fought battle. Xibalba Storm are a team that are very adept at keeping their mentals in check. I got to pass by their booth on the way into the soundstage, still smiles, still trying to discuss and figure out what they need to change. And I think that discussion is well placed because we got to put game 1 just behind us. So let's scrap that strat and move on to the next one.
And it does feel a little odd. I mean, going back to the Shiva pick, it's something that we got to harp on a little bit just because it didn't get that early game success that it's more so known for, no matter which lane that you throw it over in. When there are still things that Oceans loves to play, like ESET and Nox, if you want to go for something that can get you maybe some early pressure in the dual lane, both those picks available.
He was playing those before it was even popular in the SPL, and now that the SPL guys are on it, my man's like, Shiva, why?
And it's so funny because Shiva was popular for a while. He wasn't playing it then. We saw Shiva in the jungle. I want to call back to the Tartarus Titans, who were running Shiva Zeus as a combo earlier on into the year. And it worked really, really well for them. It's something that Layers and Paul were just dominating with. And then finally teams were starting to ban it away. And then we stopped seeing Shiva. And then we stopped seeing Zeus. Maybe this game a little indicative as to why we're at least not seeing one of those picks out there by many other teams. Just a dominant performance out of the Olympus Bolts. Haddix taking top damage at the end of it, 22,000 damage to himself in the solo lane Lancelot, which is where we've been seeing the majority of the success in this guy. Between that jungle selection and between going into the solo lane, we've been seeing much more commanding success out of the solo than we have the jungle so far, Myth.
We have, and I think that's just a byproduct of the consistency of solo lane. You're always going to have the ability to like move in towards the soul eater, get that sustain. It's pretty decent. Lancelot, that is, at just kind of holding his own there. Spectre Horse to heal off the entirety of the waves. So I think that Lancelot in the jungle certainly has a home, but it's much more difficult to build your team composition around that, whereas Lancelot in the solo lane is kind of plug and play.
For the Olympus Bolts, that one works out well for them. Haddix and the rest of the team able to rally together and take a very quick, I believe, 23-minute game, the fastest one that we've seen today. It was maybe some of the kind of expected pacing for some of these SPL teams. In the matchup with the Valkyries and the Hounds, we talked about that being one of the closer matchups as far as standings go. Bottom of SPL, top of SCC, they get a little bit closer there, and we can kind of see how close those two leagues are. And it was fairly close for a while between those. We even saw the Leviathans have a little bit of a struggle up against the Wardens in game number 2. But this, the number 2 seeded SPL team, has shown why the top of the SPL has that gap over some of these SCC teams. And now for the Xibalba Storm, it's time for them to recuperate and kind of regain themselves, because jumping into game number 2 is going to have to be some kind of a dynamic change between them.
There has to be. I think the Xibalba Storm kind of hit on the root of what they want to do. They find bits and pieces that are aggressive, and when the Xibalba Storm have succeeded in the past, it's been off of that style. Just raw aggression, find pressure in at least one of the 2 side lanes. Game 1, had it been just about any other duo lane from the Olympus Bolts besides Cupid Cabrakan, possibly the heaviest kill potential lane in the game right now, maybe we would have seen a bit more success from things like the Shiva and the support role. But otherwise, I think you could still lean on mid. The Xibalba Storm, very capable of playing through Joshy, a very talented player. Maybe put him on something a bit more aggressive, or perhaps even just get Magicfeet on something and then get his hands dirty a little bit earlier on. One of the weaknesses that we have seen continually phase in, phase out, year in, year out, is the SEC has historically struggled to find consistent farm up against these SPL teams. It's a completely different pace as far as macro is concerned. So I think that brings inherent weakness to some of these gods that require 20 to 25 minutes to come online. No matter how strong Kuang is going to look when he's 6-slotted, it doesn't matter if you end the game on 3.5 items.
That's not going to work out well for them. Pigs and Bans, game number 2. I wasn't going to be fooled by the camera angle that time of how far back Jake is leaned back. He is very far leaned back in that Maxonomic chair. And that's going to be all the way down.
Yeah, Maxonomic's the only chair that's supporting that kind of lean.
I have yet to sit in another chair that can get nearly 180-degree lean in its chair. So if you want to take a nap in a chair and quite literally lay back, make sure you grab yourself a Maxonomic. But with the Pigs and Bans, directed bans at Uzzy once again by the Bolts. Odin and Cthulhu will take the first 2 hits, and the Storm will keep up their same bans as well. Add the Morgan in there. Nothing has changed for the Bolts. Does something change for the Storm? I believe it was Yemoja. No, it wasn't Yemoja, previously taken away. But it will be Cabrakan this time. So the success from Awesome Jake in the dual lane will make sure to be at least thwarted a little bit by the Xibalba Storm. And that once again leaves Lancelot open for the Olympus Bolts. And if history is any indication, maybe seeing this one go back to Haddix.
No way he takes Artio here. I'm talking about Uzzy, right?
No, he does. There is a way. He did it once, he'll do it twice.
Can't help himself. If it isn't Cthulhu and it isn't Odin, it's gonna be Artio.
I guess because Nike's
single
also
time.
not meta right now, so maybe that's another reason we're seeing Artio.
He's just gonna keep going back towards it. This time, though, the Cupid locked in for the Storm. I think a significant improvement over the Heimdallr. There's a reason this god has had such a high priority order, and a reason this god has got such a high win rate in the SPL. Some of the buffs to his wave clear have just been completely different. How often now do we see Cupid just kind of saving his full stacked heart bomb, slamming an archer, and getting like double stuns in lane and setting up for a phenomenal poke? And then even if you are losing out on some of these trades, it takes a little while till anti-heal starts getting built into some of these roles. So Cupid has got the sustained advantage in that regard. So I really do like at least the second pick overall for the Storm. Artio still needs to prove herself, but regardless, at least some in-combat healing and should be able to hold her own in the majority of these lanes. The Bolts, though, they've already answered some pretty created some tough questions for the Storm, which is, how you going to deal with these walls? Ymir just hard stops Cupid, hard stops Artio, and unless Ratatoskr is ulting, hard stops him too.
Seems it will be difficult with the 3 drafted by the Storm to kind of get around Awesome Jake's walls. In between him and Genetics, when I think of the SPL and the SPL supports playing these picks, those are some of the players that are really putting out these pivotal walls in team fights. Xibalba Storm go into now the banning phase, the second half of it. And they'll start by targeting a little bit over towards BaRRaCCuDDa. Soul going to be taken away. Olarun would be the other magical ADC if the Storm want to put more focus onto Barra. But now we see that respect towards from the Olympus Bolts, at least towards the mid lane in Joshy. Huang going to be taken away, something that Joshy has played in 3 of the last 6 games, I guess technically now 4 of the last 7 games that he has been able to play with his team. And it's had pretty impressive slash lines, even in the losses that he's had. I'm looking at a 4-2, a 3-1, and a 5-4 in the previous matchups that he's had on that god. So making sure to put some respect there. And then with the Discordia, the busts of Discordia have really kind of made her a very promising god for mid lane.
Now with her banned as well. Joshy in the past has fallen back to things like the Thoth in situations like this, but already a 3-stacked composition that doesn't really have the greatest answers to Ymir wall. Do you want to add another little bit of flame to that fire, or fuel to that fire rather? Not certain that that's what I'd look towards. Maybe a Merlin for the Storm in this slot. Flicker should help you out with some survivability. Also synergizes pretty well with the really strong space control that Cupid already brings with Fields of Love. Certainly plenty of opportunities and plenty of selections available to Joshy because, you know, there's like 50 mages.
Tiamat also available, something that he has played. Something that we saw from Shinto earlier on. Has something to maybe at least, if you're in that flying stance, to leap over a wall if
Gilgamesh.
needed. It will be Gilgamesh for the Xibalba Storm with Ratatoskr locked in. Actually, Gilgamesh support?
It's Oceans, man.
I mean, I've seen it before. I remember back when this guy was coming around, and I look specifically at the NASCC, I think of players like Blugan, who was really liking to play this god. I think even at times when Gamma was still in the SCC, he was also slamming this god's support. Seems that may just be the case for the Xibalba Storm as well for Oceans.
I mean, it's got decent aggressive tendencies. Winds of Shamash can have good lockdown against AMC and Ymir. You really need to pull a lead on Gilgamesh, though, because all of his CC is contingent on being right on top of the enemy. So if you're falling behind, you're going to struggle to find those opportunities. Another aggressive duo lane for the Xibalba Storm, assuming that it is Gilgamesh over to support. There is flex potential. We've seen Gilgamesh solo in the past. We've seen Artio support in the past. We've seen Ratatoskr support and ADC in the past. The Xibalba Storm love to keep people guessing and get themselves an unorthodox composition this time around. The Bolts, on the other hand, could still look towards some Magical Hunters. Sol and Oleron taken off the table. I think when I think of Magical Hunters in current meta, the one that comes to my mind immediately still is that Freya. Maybe we see BaRRaCCuDDa take that one for himself, or could be this AMC headed his way. Still some flex potential in that regard as well. I wonder. Freya could struggle against individual picks. Ratatoskr, really good space control. Gilgamesh, pretty decent chase down, but not enough to dissuade BaRRa, who will be taking Queen of the Valkyries for himself. Flanked by a set. This is a pretty aggressive composition from the Bolts. And it used to be, all right, we got 4 aggressive pieces, AMC, Ymir, Lancelot, set, and then they're going to bridge this Freya into the late game. But if we're to trust that, man, and I do, when it comes to Freya, that god's just good at every portion nowadays.
And then an Athena.
That's jungle.
For the Xibalba Storm.
That's Athena jungle.
So who's mid then? Is it Gilgamesh mid?
Oh, for sure.
Ratatoskr jungle?
Yeah, no doubt.
This is...
You've nailed it, in fact.
This is an interesting composition.
You know what? Actually,
say the same.
I've decided that it's Athena mid.
All right. Well, Mifflin calls for the Athena mid from the Xibalba Storm. Thinking about Gilgamesh, I think back, there used to kind of be a joke, you know, whenever you play Kumbhakarna and Cupid. You heart bomb a minion, then you launch that minion kind of as a long-range stun for something.
That'd be
Gilgamesh
cool.
could do the same thing.
That would be cool.
I was just thinking that earlier. I was like, man, it would be really cool to see somebody drop kick the heart bomb, or like heart bomb a god and then drop kick him into another for a secondary stun to go with it. There could be some cool tech flying in that duo lane.
There could be. You'd really get locked down for a while there. Gonna be harder to find those situations, though, because Heart Bomb like just kills minions nowadays, so maybe that's something that we're gonna see a little bit more so in the early game. You know, I'll stick with it. Yeah, sure, Athena mid. What does that bring to your team? When you've got aggressive side lanes, Artio's got the ability to close gaps, stun, keep people locked down, Defender of Olympus lands. Gilgamesh has the exact same potential. Leap in, Winds of Shamash, lock them down, Defender of Olympus lands. And if it is gonna be Athena in mid, that means that a Defender of Olympus probably hits pretty hard. But it is susceptible to ganks. You're already struggling up against the Ymir wall. Yeah, you really got to get into melee range to start clearing these waves. Makes it pretty difficult to choose your spots.
And kind of talk maybe a little bit about the matchup against AMC specifically, who amongst the hunter gods out there, the ability-based hunters, is one of the harder clearing. Maybe not level 1, more so towards kind of that level 2. Really feels like this Athena might just be sitting under a tower for quite some time, Miff.
I'm thinking so. I don't think you're really picking Athena for pressure in lane. You know, you're picking Athena to get pressure in any lane that isn't yours. So expect to see a whole lot of ganks towards these side lanes at the detriment to Joshy himself. I wouldn't be overly surprised if we see a pretty significant experience disparity favoring Ven.
Well, for the Xibalba Storm, then does their strength maybe come from the team fight stage? Will kind of be a question that has to be answered as the game goes on. Olympus Bolts, Xibalba Storm, game number 2. We'll throw it to the casters one more time.
All right, well, see, I don't even have time to think of a transition. Oh, we're doing a great job. This is perfect. The height is spot on. The camera's just going to fly right on into this big old donut floaty. Right into the middle we go into game number 2. Well, God, that was great.
Perfect.
That was perfect. We are spot on. I thought we were going to have to adjust. Oh, my roll back to Mike was perfect, too. That was just perfect across the board. I was unsure of how that would go initially, but we got the height perfect right away, and that's props to us. We're hoping, though, even though our donut height didn't need any adjustment, we're hoping the Xibalba Storm made some adjustments going into game here. And Spooky, their adjustment was to put an Athena in the mid lane. Do you think that's a good call here for the Xibalba Storm?
It's definitely a decision
It is
that
a
was
decision.
made.
Yep.
Remains to be seen whether that's going to be a good decision or not. I mean, I haven't seen Joshy play Athena mid at any point, so it's going to be a surprise how that goes either way. I'm not 100% sold on it personally, but at the same time, right, we were talking about how Storm is a very aggressive team. Most of that is from Magicfeet in the jungle and Oceans in support. A lot of the time, these lanes will kind of just try to scale until the late game. That includes Joshy. So,
Oh, Haddix got it. Okay.
that was a little distressing there.
You're right,
but
a little nervous, right?
all in all, Haddix gets it, so it's all good. Let's just go back to the point. The side lanes tend to just scale up, and that's kind of flip-flopped sometimes for Joshy in the mid. Sometimes he'll be very aggro in the mid,
Yep.
in the very early game, or sometimes he'll just sit back. He'll wait and scale up along with the side lanes. If he's on Athena, he's probably looking to just scale up and play for the mid to late game. But this is also a change for Xibalba Storm's dual lane here, right? We don't usually see InMyZen playing early game gods like Cupid. They're not trying to find a ton of pressure outside of Oceans. He's normally sitting back, farming, playing passively, and just trying to scale up to accommodate Storm's playstyle. So I don't know how this is going to combine with each other. It seems like a big shift in Storm's general game plan and a fairly big game for them.
Oceans gets whittled down just a bit, but has dropkick. And they'll send Awesome Jake back. So Shiva game 1 for Oceans. Now on to Gilgamesh here for game number 2. Clearly two very different gods as far as kit goes. The question is the playstyle the same? I mean, look, by the end of game 1, it was not the best for Oceans, right? Shiva didn't quite hit its mark. Already, though, staying aggressive. He's answering my question for me. He does want to keep doing what he was doing in game number 1. It's because InMyZen is here as well. BaRRaCCuDDa used the beads. The 3-man body block simply too much, and it's the Storm Spooky who get aggressive early here in game 2, and they're able to knock down BaRRaCCuDDa. Anything to keep that Freya behind.
And I'm really glad to see them do that. I'm really liking this switch to the Ratatoskr for Magicfeet because it's so much more early game focused. It allows them to play the game style that they want to have. On the Kuang, you weren't seeing these early rotations. Well, we saw one, but it didn't translate across the map. With this Ratatoskr, Magicfeet's able to be so much more active. He has more damage in the early game, he has more utility, he has more lockdown, and he still has the ability to quickly move between lanes using through the Cosmos. So sure, he might show up on that left side, go ahead, gank BaRRaCCuDDa, put him down in the dirt. After a couple minutes here, though, he might be coming down from the skies all the way over there in the solo lane and putting Haddix behind.
Yeah, there is just global pressure here for the Storm team between Joshy, between Magicfeet, so the sudden gank potential at an all-time high this game for the Storm. Catch the Bolts off guard, and that's maybe exactly what you have to do. Now, on the flip side of the jungle, LASBRA on set. I couldn't tell you the last time I have seen a set Spooky. Like maybe Cyclone Spin, set ADC 6 months ago, something like that. You know, it's been a while. Argued as maybe not being in the best spot as far as gods go. Maybe okay over in the jungle here. But as far as aggressive goes, do you think this is the style of pick that can keep LASBRA active early in the game, or do you think Set wants a little bit of time to get up and running?
Pre-5, I don't think we'll see LASBRA being too active, just because the Kingslayer is such a potent ultimate, has so much rundown potential, and without that, you're pretty much just relying on teleporting to a sand clone, and that's not exactly where you want to be. Well, I'll have to hold that thought, though, because Jake's being aggressed on.
Yeah, but Jake has been able to turn around the aggression. Actually, Jake and BaRRa gonna slow down. The Heart Bomb connects on Awesome Jake back beneath his own tier 1 tower. So some damage traded out over in the dual lane. Magicfeet considering potentially a gank to the left side of the map, but literally no farm on the Bolt side of the jungle for Magicfeet to steal away, or on his own side of the jungle for him to confirm. So it's just a journey leftward to see if anyone from the Bolts was going to extend themselves further. But hey, AMC, that's a pretty good gank target. Unfortunately for the Xibalba Storm, Ven just healthy enough to stay alive. LASBRA, realizing that Joshy is a Guardian and somewhat tanky early in the game, simply doesn't have the damage himself to work down the opposing mid laner. Zen banished, was in tower range. Actually a meaty tower shot there. Keep Zen alive, but we've already seen both junglers getting active early here. Magicfeet, LASBRA. And beads down on both mid laners could be an opportunity for a return gank.
You gotta think though, that favors Storm a little bit more than it does the Bolts. Like you said, Joshy's on this Athena, has some better base prots than Venenu will on this Muzen Cobb. He's just squishier, has less mobility, whereas Joshy is able to use the dash. And if he gets into a real bad pinch, he can even use the Defender of Olympus to just move himself from mid lane to, I don't know, maybe over to Uzzy over there in the right lane where there's a little bit less aggression. Add on to that, like you touched on, LASBRA on this set, he's going to scale a little bit more. Magicfeet is going to be more potent in the early game than a set will. So right now, Storm is in a pretty good spot to start setting the pace of the game. Question is, can they maintain their passive farm well enough to do that? And a lot of times, we've seen them kind of fall behind in kills, but stay ahead in the gold department. That's against SCC teams. Can they do it against the SPL teams? That's the biggest question right now.
And the other question is, I think, yes, you can set the pace. Can you do it in a clean enough manner where you're not overextending and suddenly giving the Bolts a couple kills in return? Because I feel like that's something we saw in Game 1, you know. Ocean's Magicfeet. All right, we're going to get in. We're going to initiate. We're going to set the pace. Oh no, we've done too much, and suddenly 15,000 gold later, the Olympus Bolts drop the Titan. Storm, the pacing of this game, though, if you're an SEC fan, a Storm fan, or a very rare Bolts hater, you're not worried about the pace of this game just yet, because things have been looking A-okay. Now, Ven is going to scale up later into the game. Of course, you know what the AMC can bring. Stabilized lane pressure just a bit here, and if he can survive another 45 or so seconds, speeds will be back up, keep him plenty safe. And I think whenever you have the scaling conversation, you have to look towards Freya if a Freya's in the game. So we talked plenty, I think, about the early game getting smoothed out. I wonder if Magicfeet feels like you need to put some pressure over on BaRRaCCuDDa to keep the Freya from getting completely out of hand.
That's the question, isn't it? Well, we have to hold that question as we see the fight already starting up.
Yeah, and it's Haddix rotating out of solo lane, up onto the branch. Goes Magicfeet, down he crashes, but nobody's there. In fact, damage is around the corner, and Magicfeet nearly sniped by Haddix. Everyone from the Storm will live. Magicfeet would have loved to initiate, but instead it's a disengage. And it's fights like that, where the Storm actually fell behind in Game 1. This time, all 5 players from both teams remain on the map.
And definitely playing a little bit cleaner this time, not trying to force the issue when it isn't there. They recognize they're at the disadvantage, they step back. Sure, they have to burn a couple ultimates for it. It doesn't feel the best to have to do that, but it's better to burn the ultimate and live than to save it and die. Either way, you're not going to be getting any value out of it for that entire duration. I do want to see more aggression from Magicfeet, though. Like you said, you take a look at the Bolts. They have a really hard scaling team. BaRRaCCuDDa on Freya, Venenu on this AMC, and even LASBRA on this set. These are all incredibly powerful late game picks. If you want to utilize this draft that Storm has to its fullest, you have to be picking a target and going on them consistently. So far, we've only seen a couple ganks come out from Magicfeet, and you know, it did result in the first blood kill onto BaRRa. But that's not quite enough. You got to do more.
Right. Unfortunately, when you have that many targets, that much scaling, pace has really got to be high here for the Xibalba Storm. BaRRaCCuDDa has fallen just a bit behind, maybe half a level to InMyZen. I mean, think about it. Ven didn't have his beads for a couple of minutes there and was able to live through that. On the flip side, Joshy just had to reburn the beads on the Athena. So applying some more pressure potentially to mid, especially on Rat. I mean, you just go up and it's not quite that simple, but you dunk down on Ven, see if you can get the beads off. Yeah, it can't be that simple, right? That's why I always play Rat in my ranked games if I get stuck in jungle. Super easy ganks over to mid. Unfortunately, this is what you're fighting against, and it's the burst damage from Ven, plus the rest supplied by the Olympus Bolts. Joshy under a bit of extra threat as well. Banish from BaRRaCCuDDa, not there. And InMyZen, just to be annoying, drops the Fields of Love on the back line. A good wall from Jake. Yeah, I mean, as Cupid can get caught out. Winds of Shamash, an answer back from Oceans. And here comes Joshy ulting into the mid lane. Ven beads no more, but Peel from support in there as well. LASBRA up and over the wall, chases down Oceans. And Joshy with the Valkyrie's discretion gunned down by BaRRaCCuDDa. We gave so much praise, Spooky, to the Storm and pulling out when the fight didn't look good. Unfortunately, this time they stick around a bit too long.
At the start of that, I thought it was the Bolts who might have been overextended a little bit, trying to take it a little bit too much. Unfortunately, InMyZen just burns the Fields of Love for little to no value at all. Sure, you know, you got a Mez onto Venenu. That's great. he didn't get anything off of that. So he tries to dash away. Well, unfortunately, you were also looking at Awesome Jake. He puts up the wall, throws out the stun, and there's the engage from Storm. They try to push it a little bit further in, but they don't have the tools remaining to push that fight all the way. Sure, they burn out some beads, but you're losing your life for it. It's just not a worth trade, and it's this thing that Storm just keeps getting trapped in, the constant re-engage, 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 and it hasn't been working out.
No, it hasn't, given the Olympus Bolts. I mean, think back to where Game 1 took off for the Bolts, and it was a fight like that, couple thousand gold, that then gets transferred into these next few moments. The Pyromancer on one side, the Gold Fury on the other. I think the Storm, you know, to tweak some strategy, then have to think about how much you're willing to spend to defend this, right? I mean, if you're Oceans, if you're Magicfeet, I mean, his Pyromancer is surely going over to the Bolts.
Oh, yeah.
But is Ocean's going to walk in, try to steal it away, and end up dying for it? This time, no. Maybe yes, if Jake has the range to get the wall off, but it looks like everyone from the Storm
No shot
walks
Oceans.
away. No. Well, if the Bolts were chasing him down, there'd be damage, but instead, a bit of a split focus. And so, luckily for the Storm, Pyromancer does go to the Bolts, but there's not that ultimate extra chase down. Good objective secure by the Olympus Bolts. Can now look to apply pressure elsewhere on the map.
I'm actually a little bit surprised that the Bolts didn't try to commit more to Oceans there, especially since he didn't seem to have that Hero's Advance available. You saw the wall come up. He didn't have a way to get over that wall at that point. It had already been burned earlier on, but that's because they're looking for the aggression over here in the mid lane.
Joshy takes the Stinger. He'll deliver it back to his own Tier 1 tower. Ven would love to step forward and pick that up. Might be able to do so if Oceans is no longer on the map. Stinger back to full cooldown. Ven not able to get it, but a kill onto Oceans. Another good look for the Olympus Bolts, and that's where the individual picks can start to scale up here. Have to look towards the left side of the map here eventually, or maybe we'll stick on right. Can Magicfeet make the difference here? 3-man knockup, but the ultimate sure feels good, but face plants into the wall. Joshy's ulting into this fight. Is that just going to deliver another kill to the Olympus Bolts, though? LASBRA so low, but it's massive damage out of the set. Delivers a double kill to Haddix. Then the Olympus Bolts make the Storm pay for re-engaging on that fight. And it looks like we have reached a very similar point here in Game 2, where the Bolts starting to build up that big gold lead.
What was that, like 5 skewers that LASBRA just slammed into them with? Like, that was so much damage, so much healing coming out from the Kingslayer, right? You see the set at this low health threshold, you think, okay, yeah, that's a free kill. That's easy, we can do that.
Yeah.
You can't. There's too much healing. He's level 12 right now, and Magicfeet's level 9. They don't have the damage to put him down. So this funnel, one by one into this fight, sure, you're getting the health bars low, but there's just not enough damage. You are too squishy. You don't have the gold, the damage to follow through with all those engagements. And you take a look at these builds here, right? Oceans is doing this kind of weird hybrid build, and sure, it makes sense. He's on Gilgamesh, he wants to be aggressive, he wants to build this damage.
Yep.
But it just means that you're not going to be as tanky as normal support would, and also means you're not going to have as much damage as a normal solo laner or a jungler would. This Glad Shield, sure, it gives you a little bit, but you've only got the Gauntlet of Thieves, and you're just too squishy, as you're seeing right here.
Right, it's hybrid in its truest form. Not only damage, tankiness-wise, but how you're forced to play the game. Ultimate and Heart Bomb out from Zen. Stun onto Ven, but Magicfeet evaporates Ocean's Will as well. And, you know, my next question was actually maybe going to be along these types of lines. Another brilliant wall from Awesome Jake, by the way. He is just feeling himself on this Ymir. 208, 100% kill participation. Same for LASBRA at 307. I was going to ask Spooky, because we've seen this story before in Game 1, where the Bolts just kept going in, and the game just got so far out of hand. How are you avoiding that here in Game 2? But it looks like there's just more fighting for the Xibalba Storm.
Yeah, it's getting to an awkward position for them now. If they're... Joshy just has no chance. He has to dash away. That is just brutal to watch. 2 levels up is LASBRA.
Anyway.
No way!
He may just die anyway. Haddix is on a killing spree. And actually, you know, on the flip side of that question could be an answer, and it's that the Olympus Bolts, potentially Spooky, just have a style of comp that can force you to keep fighting.
Well, you also have to stop stepping forward, right? Joshy chooses to step all the way forward in that mid lane, and LASBRA's just there to answer. You have to get the wards down. You have to make sure you're warding deep, and you can see where the bolts are coming from. So you know if you're about to walk into a massive flank that they've been doing constantly. So it sucks, but sometimes you have to take that step back. You have to let that mid wave come to you, clear that of the safety of your tower line, and that's kind of the thing that the Storm has to do as a whole right now. They have to be willing to take that step back. But as you touched on earlier, this is a team that has fun. They like to run it down, so I don't know if we're going to see that change.
InMyZen. Oh, a rare miss of a wall from Awesome Jake. Ven having a good time with it as all of the bolts smack face first into the ice wall, and InMyZen will scurry away. Beads and Aegis both down, and Gold Fury over to the Olympus Bolts. So the Bolts clearly feeling themselves here in a game like this. You know, what's unfortunate about finding safety if you're the Storm is that, like, you think it's your tier 1 and mid, but in reality, it's like way back under your tier 2s right now just because of how the Bolts are playing.
My.
Well, Zen got away with it a second ago. He's going to drop a ward there, but at what cost, Zen? At what cost? It's not the 50 gold that you spend on the ward, it's the mental tax of walking back to lane only to die off yet again. Far too dominant, I think, of a position here for the Olympus Bolts to be super worried about fumbling things. And see, it's like this, right? I mean, Laz used the Aegis, it's fantastic, but then the rest of the Bolts show up, and so we're getting an answer to the question. Would a few Bolts beat out an entire Storm? And apparently the answer is yes. The Bolts are feeling just fine with the lead they've built up, and Storm are maybe looking towards Titan defense or potentially their next matchup.
It's almost a trick question, right? Because the question is a few bolts against an entire Storm.
Right.
Most of these fights have been the entire bolts against a much smaller Storm.
That's right.
A few rain clouds rolling in additionly. Clouds now rolling into the Fire Giant.
Oh no, Uzzy won't steal it away. Again, you know, it almost happened with the blue buff at the beginning of the game. Uzzy was due for one, right? It just hasn't been able to cash the check just yet. That's a very poignant thought there, Spooky. You're right, it has been, you know, maybe a thundercloud here or there. I guess it also depends on, like, you know, many bolts. Magicfeet won't end up getting run down by Ven. Wants a stinger. And when you're this far ahead, you can walk into 3 members of the Storm and burn your beads and feel just fine with it. Add another one to the good wall counter because Awesome Jake has hit it yet again. 13 affected kills for Awesome Jake at this point in the game. Pulls ahead of his jungler. And Ven just behind. Ven's got a real nice support KDA rolling right now. A nice 1-0-11 on the AMC mid.
Could have been 2.
Could have been 2, you're absolutely right.
Jake said no to that one, unfortunately.
Yeah, but that's also just Jake, right? I mean, at this point, Jake at 4, I'm surprised Jake hasn't started spamming like Chronos Pen and things like that. Actually playing for the boys. Frenzy used by the Bolts and the right side Phoenix. And a nice initiation though from the Storm, the best looking initiation we've seen from the Storm up to this point. And yes, you get a kill. But how many are you going to lose in the meantime? BaRRaCCuDDa swinging away, misses a few on a Joshy. But Uzzy, unfortunately, walked forward, sustains up just a bit, but all that auto attack damage and Haddix diving the fountain mean the Bolts are going to watch Ven drop. And so both of the ADC characters die off for the Olympus Bolts here. And why not when you're Lancelot? Walk into the Storm base. But a good-looking team fight there, despite a great initiation from the Storm.
Yeah, just a little bit unlucky. It's that deficit that they're at right now. You take a look, it's 14,000 in favor of the Bolts. Sure, you can get a really good initiation off, but if you don't have the damage to follow it up with, you don't have the items there to make the rest of that fight happen, all it is a good initiation, which will quickly turn south, as we just saw. Right? The Bolts are able to just burn their beads, take a step back, reset, and just go right back in. They didn't even have to reset. They just regathered themselves, found their target, and said, okay, this is who we're killing, make it happen. BaRRaCCuDDa was able to just constantly free cast through that whole thing because Storm had to put every single resource they had into just killing Venenu. You have 2 immobile targets, and you can still only kill 1 of them. That's the game state right now.
Yeah, it's tough for the Xibalba Storm. Really does give you a glimpse, though, at just how good the top end, really all of the FPL, but the top clean, consistent squads. I mean, the Bolts haven't even looked their best in their recent SPL matchups to use your words, regather themselves and do this to the Xibalba Storm. Should give their fans some confidence in what we expect to be a week 2 berth for this Olympus Bolts team. Already a double kill for Haddix. Could be more, though, if Joshy is unable to work his way away. There's still a tier 2 tower here, fellas. We can't work on this Phoenix in mid just yet, but you can work on the one on left, and that's exactly what Jake BaRRaCCuDDa and Ven are doing. A 3 versus 2, and it's almost like a 1 versus 3 now. Laz is just waiting for his moment to go in, while Haddix does the rest of the work.
Here they come.
Yeah, but again, there's still a tier 2 tower, Bolts. You can't take down this Phoenix just yet, but I suppose you can team fight.
Bear's gonna try.
Swinging
He's
at it.
gonna
You gotta
try.
kill the tower. Oh, this could be big on a return from Magicfeet. Instead, he's just initiated onto Haddix. Magicfeet dashes away. We can regather ourselves maybe before the end of the game.
Now we're gonna finally go ahead and turn our attention toward this tier 2. I think they maybe didn't even realize until BaRRaCCuDDa started swinging at the Phoenix. Saw immune. It's like, oh, hey guys, we gotta take a step, but we gotta go kill that one first. Now we're gonna go ahead and step forward, take this Phoenix down, looking like a tight siege.
Yeah, should be double stun on the front line, double whoop, double freeze. All of it double for the Olympus Bolts, and looks like a double win here on this best-of-3 set. LASBRA unstoppable at 7-0-10. And what a way for the Olympus Bolts to bounce back. It lost 3 of their last 4 sets in the SPL. Wanted to put on a good showing here in their first matchup. Xibalba Storm just got their aggression stifled time and time again. We'll get one more team fight. InMyZen grabs a shutdown onto LASBRA, but Haddix and the rest of the team still alive. In a rare Bolt watching the rest of the team fight. And this game will come to a close. The Olympus Bolts find themselves a 2-0. And a great looking team win here from the Bolts, and some reorganization for the Xibalba Storm going into their next matchup.
Yeah, they're gonna take their time with this one, but eventually this will go down. A couple rugs burned, but Bolster's just looking to pad a few stats, it would seem.
On all the minions. It ruined their day. It ruined their day.
Unbelievable.
Look, what's the takeaway got to be in a matchup like this? I mean, obviously the Bolts a very good team. Xibalba Storm, absolutely very good and deserve to be qualified into this tournament. It just felt like the Bolts had the answers. The aggression just seemed to be answered by the Olympus Bolts all set long.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it comes down to target prioritization.
Sure.
Constantly, we see the Bolts swarming their target, putting all of their damage into one single target on the map. We're not seeing that from the Storm. They're trying to get aggressive, but they're aggressing onto different targets. They have a great engage, it hits multiple people, but then they don't focus on a single one of those members. They split their attention across the multiple targets they've hit with their engage. And so it just doesn't end up, one team fight.
Yeah, agreed. Look, I don't mind. I love the mindset, actually, from the Storm. I hope to see them stick with their identity. Could make some waves later on in the weekend. You'll see more of the Storm later on this week. Bolts as well, but that's it for this one. Bolts take the 2-0. And that's it for us two. We'll head back to the desk to break this one down.
Yeah, thank you so much. Olympus Bolts with a clean 2-0 over the Xibalba Storm. Means it's our 3rd SPL team to now qualify into the upper bracket of play within their respective groups. The Xibalba Storm, like their other SCC contenders along with them in North America, will be moving down into the losers bracket. We'll have to make a much longer run if they want to try and qualify themselves into the 2nd week of play. But just like game number 1, Mifflin, game number 2 goes just as decisively over to the Bolts in almost the exact same amount of time and almost in the exact same fashion. At least this time, though, there was some signs of hope for the Xibalba Storm. That dual lane very early on, very potent, very kill heavy. We did see Magicfeet make some early rotations over there and find that aggression. The problem is Haddix kind of got left unchecked on the right side of the map, and that's when we get to see him 3v1ing under the Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you remember those silver linings, because I was struggling to find them, man. The Olympus Bolts were bullying, and that's essentially all it was. I mean, that was the SMITE equivalent of shoving someone in their locker. That was one-sided through and through both games this set. The Olympus Bolts, I think, just decided to send a message. Aggression across the board. I could hit every buzzword with every single one of these players. Let's start. LASBRA dominant across the map.
Okay.
I left no stone unturned. Who else is on the screen right now? Awesome Jake 408. Just great walls, great freezes, great glacial strikes. Connects all of his CC and makes sure there was no escape path. Who are we looking out now? We saw on LASBRA, I guess. BaRRaCCuDDa may have been a late game powerhouse, but he brought it early on in this one because there was really no opportunity for the Xibalba Storm to fight back. Sans that very earliest portion. Haddix absolutely dominated. You hit this one already. I mean, my man was unchecked and unbounded in this match. I mean, I can't come up with something bad to say about the Olympus Bolts, except that maybe they could have ended the game quicker, but that was their own machinations as they decided to farm damage in the fountain.
And unfortunately for them, the minions thwarted their plans of being able to find a couple of extra picks at the very end of the game. 7-1 for Laz, 5-1 for BaRRaCCuDDa. Jake and Haddix put up a combined 10-0 between the two of them. So it's the frontliners of the Olympus Bolts who go undying this game and put out quite a few kills of their own, at least at the very end there. Xibalba Storm definitely have to do a little bit of recuperating when it comes down to the remainder of their bracket. They'll have to wait to see who their opponent is going to be tomorrow whenever those games do pan out. It's an unfortunate loss for them to go up against the Bolts, but there is a reason why the Olympus Bolts are the #2 seed in the SPL. There's a reason why they've been at the top of the standings for so long. And it's when they come in and they do the business as usual style of gameplay and just put on a performance like this.
Yeah, and when I think of the SPL, two teams scream SCL crushers to me. Olympus Bolts, I feel like their style of play really does transition very well to just, hey, we're going to do what we're going to do, and we're not really too concerned about the other side. The other team that I think could be just SCC, SCL crushing squads, Jade Dragons. I'm pretty excited for that set, too.
I think the Jade Dragons will be a fun one, but before we can even get to that set, we do have a post-game interview with the frontliners of the Olympus Bolts standing by.
Yeah, frontliners of the Olympus Bolts here with me. Got awesome Jake and Haddix. You guys had your hands full in that set. Plenty of initiating to be done. Look, Jake, in a set where not much goes wrong, I have to ask, there was one faceplant wall in particular. It looked like you guys were chasing down one target of the Storm, and you threw up, I think it was InMyZen on the Cupid who was about to get away. 3 of you guys were chasing him. Wall goes up, and it's actually you 3 who faceplant into the wall, and Zen gets away just fine. Is that a moment that's going to be with you tonight when you try to go to sleep?
Got caught in 4K there. You know, the walls have been lackluster lately.
Caught on cams.
Yeah, I'm going to try to, like, step it up for this Masters tournament. Going to get some Ymir games in, you know. Yeah.
Haddix, you get to play the Lancelot solo here in this set. Was it as fun as advertised?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I like playing new Broken Gods. I mean, I enjoy it. Las was begging for it, but unfortunately I just had to take it from his hands, you know. Yeah,
sure. I imagine there's some argument going on in the back room there. Look, this is a consistent, clean set from you guys. Excited to see what you're able to do further on in the weekend. Beach-themed question. Beach or mountains? Would you even go to the beach if you had the choice, or would you rather go somewhere nice and cold on a mountaintop? Both of you.
What about you?
You know, I've been hitting the gym, trying to get the beach bod. So, yeah, I'm definitely a beach guy. Yeah.
Beach? Haddix, beach?
I enjoy both, probably beach more.
I can vouch. I saw Jake in the gym the other day, and he was moving immense amounts of weight. Every plate in the gym was on his machine, so I had to go with that. Look, great first set of the weekend for you guys. Congrats on your win. Looking forward to seeing more of you guys. We'll see more of the desk right now.
So it seems a couple of beachgoers, at least on the Olympus Bolts. I think in my end-up question on there, I end up going with the beach. That's just I've only ever been to the mountains once, and I kind of live.
Which ones?
It was in Colorado near Colorado Springs. So I can't tell you the exact mountains and mountain ranges that I've been through, but somewhere around that area because I was only there for like one day when I went to go see a show up there with my friend and his birthday and whatnot. That was a couple of years back. Actually, it's more than a couple of years at this point. Good Lord, that was like 6 years ago.
You
I
don't
went
gotta
there.
expose yourself. It was like last month.
Yeah, it was a casual month ago, but
that's right.
Some of the beaches in Texas really weren't so great, especially because the closest one to me was Galveston. Not the greatest one, but when I got to go to a place like Orange Beach, Alabama, those were nice. Definitely get your chance to go there, Emerald Coast of Florida. But back into the game, back into the remainder of our day at the very least. The Olympus Bolts find themselves with a 2-0 win here over the Xibalba Storm. As I said earlier, they'll move on in to the upper bracket. And the Xibalba Storm will have to fight now through the losers bracket to try and make their run through. Because remember, 2 teams in every single one of these groups are going to be moving their way on to the second week of play. So even with one fault on day number 1, they still have another chance back on day number 3, Myth.
Yeah, so if you're fun havers / Xibalba Storm fans, don't worry, or maybe be worried. I don't know, there's not much to hold on to in that set. I'm sure they'll reevaluate, recontextualize, and revitalize, something, rematch, I suppose, because that one was not one that I think they want to hold on to. But don't you worry, they'll get another shot a little bit later on this week. Look, first off, I got to come at you. You named like 7 beaches, and I don't think you like brought up Florida, did you?
I did. Emerald Coast in Florida.
What is that? Where is that?
It's kind of up near kind of in the Panhandle of Florida area.
Isn't the whole thing a panhandle?
Well, no, just the upper portion is the Panhandle.
Understood.
Kind of like in Texas and Oklahoma. Like Oklahoma specifically looks like a pan, and that's the handle.
Bro, I'm so sick of geometry.
Unfortunate for you, but fortunate for the fans. We can take a look at the schedule because we got one more set to go. 2-0s across the board for the SPL squads and the Leviathans, Valkyries, and Bolts. And now our final match of the day, the one that you've been looking forward to as the SCC, SOC kind of crusher squad, the Jade Dragons.
With Scream?
Up
For sure.
against the Athenian Sages. And now with new jungler Scream, the Jade Dragons are on a 6-game win streak after they had to play 3 straight sets last weekend. and see if they can continue that with maybe another 2-0 today.
Yeah, I mean, if we were talking about like Sanford Soccer, Jade Dragons, I feel like that was a team that wanted to play a little bit more clean, and I'm sure there was probably some discussion like, yo, why is he saying Jade Dragons? Like the Camelot Kings are like dominating everybody. When the Camelot Kings play, it's clean Smite. When the Jade Dragons play, they're trying really hard to put gum in your hair. You know what I mean? Like they are like 1980s just movie bullies, and I feel like that style of play probably translates much better to these interleague tournaments.
Well, along with the Bolts and the Storm, Scarabs and Hexmamba are the other two teams in this bracket of play. So still some more opportunities for Xibalba Storm, whether it be the #1 EU counterpart of the SEC and Hexmamba or the Solar Scarabs, who meet them down in the lower bracket. Still some potential chances for rematches down the road. Should the Olympus Bolts fall to one of these two teams in the future matchup, there's potential there. Otherwise, Xibalba Storm are going to be waiting for the loser of match 7 before they have another opportunity to strike. Speaking of, have you ever actually seen somebody pushed in a locker before? I cannot tell you a single time that I've actually seen that in all of my years of schooling.
I've put someone in a locker before.
What?
Look, I went to like 9 high schools,
Okay.
and one of them I was only there for like a month, and I decided that I was going
That's
to
how
pretend.
you're going to go out on it.
I pretended 2 things. I was like, I'm going to be really mean, and I also pretended that I was mute. So like they were like trying to talk to me, and I wouldn't talk back. It was a good time. Yeah, I've put someone in a locker before.
Can't speak, but can shove somebody in a locker.
That's right.
I will say I have put gum in somebody's hair before.
That's worse. That's what. That's worse.
That was a friend of mine. No,
that's even you betrayed your friends.
It was accidental. I didn't do it on purpose.
Okay.
I was sitting on the top of a bunk bed, and the gum fell out of the gum fell out of my mouth and into his hair. He had to get his hair cut after that. But that's it for set number 3. We got one more set coming up to you guys next. Jade Dragons and Athenian Sages right after this break.